best to say. With some Southern charm, alright. Yeah, with some Southern charm, it's nice. Hey, yeah, it's the IDP show, now you know.
Welcome in to this YouTube exclusive for the IDP show. I'm your host, Josh Raymer, and in this video, we are going to be previewing the Thanksgiving slate of games. And we actually have a pretty nice three-pack here for the Thanksgiving holiday, including a game for the first time that I can remember involving the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving that we actually want to watch. So what we're going to do in this video is walk you through some of the top IDPs for each of these matchups. We won't be hitting on everyone, but with the holidays going on, IDP is enough of a challenge as it is to keep track of double the number of players. So hopefully this video will just serve as a little bit of a refresher, a resource, a kind of quick reference point for you to get those guys into your lineups from these Thursday slate of games. So let's kick things off here with the first game. It is Bills at Lions. The Lions are suddenly frisky on a 3-game winning streak. The Bills, one of the top teams in the AFC, and some really nice IDP options in this game. So what we're going to do for each team and for each game, we're going to start with the visiting team first, highlight a few options, and then we'll move to the home team. So let's kick things off. Top option for the Buffalo Bills. He made his return last week in a big way. It's the handsome one, Matt Milano, averaging 16.59 points per game, and came back, like I said, in a big way with 32.8 points last week against the Cleveland Browns in Detroit, mind you. So will we see the same magic from Milano? I don't know, but as a manager myself, I'm glad to have this guy back in my lineup, and you're firing Milano up with confidence. Also, the Buffalo Bills got back safety Jordan Poyer, and gosh, were they glad to see him back in the lineup, making an immediate impact here. Had 11.75 points with 5 total tackles. So the Bills very happy to have Jordan Poyer back as our IDP manager. So another great option there. And then, of course, the big name free agent acquisition this offseason was edge rusher Von Miller. Has been averaging 13.29 points per game this season. He is great for that big play league flex spot. We are using big 3 scoring for these points per game calculations. This is the kind of player I love to plug into my flex spot. Even if he's classified as a linebacker, that doesn't bother me. Over his last 4 games, you kind of see the full gamut here with Von Miller. Week 8, 2 points. Week 9, 17.5. Week 10, 14.5. Week 11, 2 points. But he's also given you games of 31.7 points and 26.4. So really a boom-bust option, but I love swinging for upside in those big play flex spots, especially if he's classified as a linebacker. If he's classified as a DL or an edge, I'm rolling Von Miller out there every single week. So that's it for the Bills. Some other options. Tyrell Dotson will be filling in for Tremaine Edmonds, who's out again. But let's move over to the Detroit Lions side of things. Not as exciting, but definitely some names we want to bring up here. Alex Anzalone, what we call him, porn parody Thor, I believe it was. He is averaging 12.87 points per game. Not the sexiest linebacker in the world. Probably a nice LB2-3 option for you. Milano, you're firing up as an LB1. If you've got him as your LB2, that's fantastic. Anzalone's running that 2-3 borderline for me. A player who's been making waves, especially here recently, Aidan Hutchinson, averaging 12.09 points per game. And I wanted to pull up his log to give you all the last few games because he started off the year quiet, had that big blow up in week 2, 35.5 points. But outside of that game, the first 6 weeks of the season, because he had his bye in week 6, he was in single digits the rest of the time. But since then, he has been really solid with the exception of week 8. So week 7, 20.9. Week 8, 0.75. So that's the position, folks. But the last 3 weeks, 11.5, 20.5, 17.75. Now, he did have 2 interceptions mixed in there. So that is a little bit inflated, but I think you have to put Aidan Hutchinson in there, especially if you have a deep enough league where you're rolling out multiple edge rushers. I'm going to be putting Aidan Hutchinson out there because he's the type of player I don't want to go off on my bench. And I also wanted to mention safety DeShon Elliott, 12.19 points per game. And he has been really solid for us recently as well. So according to Sleeper here, he is on pace to log a new career high in tackles as long as he can remain healthy. The last 7 weeks of the season, he has been really solid. So he got banged up week 10 against Chicago, only played 29 snaps. So we tossed that game out. But going back to week 7, the Lions had their bye in week 8. He has gone 12.25 in week 7. 11.75 in week 9, got banged up last week, but against the Giants, or 2 weeks ago, last week against the Giants goes 12 points for us. So DeShon Elliott, a great safety option for you there. Malcolm Rodriguez, another name to keep an eye on. We saw him be productive on limited snaps, but Derek Barnes is still in the mix. I'm staying away from the other 2 Lions linebackers. Once Rodrigo gets back up to full health, if he can resume that kind of part-time 60 to 70% snap role that we saw him trending towards before he got hurt, I'll be interested, but I'm sitting both those guys down outside of Anzalone right now. Let's move to the second game, Giants at Cowboys. Another fun game. Are the Giants for real? This will be a great measuring stick to see how they do against a team that's really rounding into shape as we near the holiday season. So let's start with the Giants options. We've talked a lot about this guy having his emergence this year. Dexter Lawrence, 12.56 points per game, and has just been phenomenal, especially if he's classified as a defensive tackle in those leagues. You know, with any defensive tackle, you're going to see games like he's had 5.25, 6.25, 2, 7, but he's also given you games of 24.65, 27.15, 17.95. So just a great option. I think he's in consideration even in DL sleeper leagues, but especially if you've got this guy in a D-tackle required league, fire him up with confidence. We should also mention his defensive line mate, Leonard Williams, has been a little up and down, but the last 3 games, Leonard Williams is averaging 17.08 points per game. So he has been heating up as of late. And so that's why we wanted to pull sort of some recent data for some of these players. You'll see a lot of these averages are across the entire season. Some of them, though, we wanted to highlight. Maybe they've been a little colder earlier in the season and have heated up. And that's been Leonard Williams. So he missed a chunk of the season. First 2 weeks scored 7.75 points combined. But since week 8, he has gone 27.2, 18.05, and 6 points last week against the Lions. So I like Leonard Williams, again, especially if you have him classified as a D tackle. I think he's even in the mix depending on your DL depth in those sleeper leagues. And we also should point out safety Julian Love, 12.71 points per game. It's been great to have Julian Love back. He has been playing that box safety role that we love, playing up close to the line of scrimmage, giving him an opportunity to make plays. But let's go last 5 weeks. Here is the log for Julian Love. 21.95 points in week 6 against Baltimore, 12.25, 9, 5.75, 14.75. So I think Julian Love is a top 12 option as far as safeties go, and I have no problem firing him up against what should be a high volume passing attack with Dak Prescott, with Michael Gallup, with CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, all those guys out there. Tony Pollard catching passes as well. So speaking of the Cowboys, let's talk about their options. You know the first one we're going to bring up. It is do-it-all unicorn linebacker edge rusher Micah Parsons, a mind-blowing 21.33 points per game average on the season. There's not a lot of new ground to break up here. You're starting Micah Parsons every single week, regardless of the matchup. Not a lot of IDPs you can say that about. Micah Parsons, top of that list. So let's move on to a couple other options here. Edge DeMarcus Lawrence. Another great option, even alongside someone as prolific as Micah Parsons. We've seen this a lot this season. Actually, we'll talk about the Patriots and the Vikings here in the next game, but you look at those two. Sometimes when you have two prolific edge rushers, both can be productive for IDP, and we're seeing that here with the Cowboys as well. DeMarcus Lawrence, as well as, don't forget, discount DeMarcus Lawrence on his own team, Dorrance Armstrong as well. Leighton Vander Esch has been a viable option. So you're firing up DeMarcus Lawrence. If you've got him as your DN2, that's fantastic, but I am rolling him out there in all formats. And then finally, wanted to point out Jayron Kearse. So he is actually playing a little bit better than Donovan Wilson, who has scored more points on the season for the Cowboys. Kearse is actually averaging 15.93 points per game over the last 3 games. So bit of a three-headed dragon there in Dallas with those safeties. Malik Hooker is in the mix as well, Donovan Wilson. But Jayron Kearse, the last few weeks here, we got him the last 4 weeks at 15.93 points per game. Let's just go through the log. So starting week 7 against Detroit, Cowboys had their bye in week 9. He has gone 12.5, 22.2, 8.25, and 20.75. So a couple 20-point games in there. Jayron Kearse is my preferred option of these safeties. But just to give you the comparison here to Donovan Wilson, let's also look at his safety mate, who, again, has scored more points on the season and hasn't been a bum by any stretch. So during that same time span, 22.25, 12.5, 7.75, and 2.5. So both are great options. I just wanted to call out Jayron Kearse here. But if you've got Donovan Wilson, you've got Kearse, I would feel comfortable firing either of those guys up. Let's move to the third game here, Patriots at Vikings. Another great measuring stick game for the Vikings coming off of that beatdown at the hands of the Cowboys. So much like Micah Parsons, you are firing up Matthew Judon, the best option from this Patriots defense. There won't be a lot of guys. We're not going to hit multiple guys here. We have 2 guys I want to highlight for the Patriots. We've mentioned this a lot on our show. This is not a team that we look for fantasy production on offense or defense. It's just too volatile, especially with the way that Bill Belichick likes to rotate his defensive players, especially those safeties. You may say, what about Kyle Duggar, Josh? You guys aren't going to talk about him on this preview? No, because he had that nice game last week, and I fully expect there to be another safety that pops, whether it's Adrian Phillips or Jabril Peppers. You know, this is not a safety group that I feel as confident. It's kind of the opposite of the Dallas Cowboys, where I'd feel good rolling out, Donovan Wilson or Jayron Kearse. I don't feel good rolling out Duggar, Peppers, Phillips, any of those guys. But I do feel great about Matthew Judon. I think he's in the mix for IDP MVP this season. 20.59 points per game. Let's move on because you're starting Matthew Judon, obviously. Another player I wanted to call out, Juwan Bentley. Again, New England linebackers, much like their safeties, not a position we look to for profitability, but Juwan Bentley has been really good the last 4 games, averaging just a shade over 15 points per game. Let me give you the log here. So a little bit quiet to start the season. He had a nice game week 1, 18.45, but then was single digits the rest of the way through week 7. And since week 7, he has gone 13.5, 12.95, 23, bye week, and then 10.75. So if you're in a pinch with linebackers, maybe you've got Bentley and you're hurt with injuries or buys, I think you could do worse than rolling out Juwan Bentley. He has been really, really solid the last month. So let's talk about the Vikings. I mentioned earlier, 2 edge rushers that you can feel very comfortable firing up. Za'Darius Smith, there is a question on the injury. So as we're recording this here on Wednesday afternoon, about 1:45 p.m. Central Time, there's still a question of whether or not he's going to be able to go. But if he does play, and I do expect him to play, he has been really productive for us this season, 18.05 points per game, one of the best edge rushers from a pure NFL standpoint that we have in the game in 2022. And his running mate, Danielle Hunter, has been heating up as of late, 15.15 points per game. And let's pull up the log because it has been immaculate to kind of these last 3 or 4 games here. Started off the season strong, 18.15, but then went 3 straight games of single digits. But since then, y'all, Danielle Hunter has been really solid, going 20.4, 24.6, 12.25, 28.75, 13.1, and 6.5 last week against the Dallas Cowboys. So Danielle Hunter, will he finish top 6 like I planted my flag? We'll see, but I'm plugging him in this week against the New England Patriots. And keep in mind, too, a lot of the analysis I've heard of this Thanksgiving slate, listening to different podcasts, both have mentioned that this New England offensive line is compromised. So just another reason to fire up these edge rushers who could get after Mac Jones behind a little bit depleted offensive line for the Patriots. And lastly, want to call out Eric Kendricks, who does not have a K at the end of his last name. That is a typo. But Eric Kendricks, 13.06 points per game over the last 4. He has actually been the more productive of the 2 linebackers. Jordan Hicks has been great this season as well, but you look at his last 4 games here. So this is for Jordan Hicks, 7.5, 22, 7.75, and then 6.5. And then let's pull up Kendricks' log as well so we can compare apples to apples here. So Kendricks has gone 15.25, 13.75, 20, and 3.25. Both great options, but if you had to pick one over the last 4 games, it is Eric Kendricks. So I would be rolling out both those linebackers. Like Bobby has mentioned, he's in a league where he's got both these guys. And if you're in that situation, I think you can roll both out there confidently. But that does it for this Thanksgiving slate of games. Don't forget, I will be doing the Week 12 preview Friday afternoon with Jake Colhagen, the lead IDP analyst for Reality Sports Online. He's been writing the Start Sit article for us going back to, I think, Week 8, has been crushing it. So make sure you're subscribed over at theidpshow.com so you can check out Jake's work. And then make sure you come back on Friday. Maybe you've got another Thanksgiving dinner. Maybe you're traveling. It's a great time to have an IDP preview podcast to get you ready for this weekend's slate of games. But hope you all have enjoyed this short little Thanksgiving slate preview. Wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving. We are incredibly grateful for all the support that we've gotten this year, all of our listeners, all of our subscribers, and all of our viewers. So thank you for checking out this video, and we'll see you all on Friday.